Welcome to Blueprints. I'm Bodine Sanders, the producer and host. Joining me today is Rob Finkelstein, founder, CEO of Alumni Direct, and the podcast host of Athletes to Entrepreneurs the Alumni Journey. I've known Rob for a little while. I'm happy for him to be here. Rob, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me today, Bodine. I appreciate it.
No worries. Thanks again. So let's jump right into it. Share your positive perspective on diversity, equity, and inclusion from where you sit. And you know, sports is big for you and for me. And I love talking about sports, but share with the audience your positive perspective.
I think it's great bringing everybody together. And it's, you know, as I reflect back and I look at my podcast now, I've probably done about, I think I'm over 110 episodes now. And it's such a diverse group. I mean, I've had former Olympians, I've had like college wrestlers, I've had female swimmers, basketball players, you know, NBA, NFL. But it's cool because it's just, you see these athletes across all sports, male, female, and there's that camaraderie, there's that DNA skill set that athletes have, and it's cool because it doesn't matter like who's doing that podcast. Like each one, I really get enjoyment out of it because just the information that they're sharing and the advice that they give. So it just shows you that it doesn't have to be stereotyped into one particular type of athlete, and that that star Division I football player or NFL player. There's a lot of sports and a lot that people can offer out there.
Absolutely. I totally agree. How did the idea of Alumni Direct start?
I've always been in sales for many years, and networking, connecting is something that's really important to me. And I was the president of my alumni club for University of Delaware down in South Florida. And to me, it's always cool when you see an alumni, ultimately that person could be a jerk, you never know. But I mean, it's because you went to that same school, you have that affinity relationship. And so we started building this club. And as a president, most of it was social. We'd go to being down South Florida, Marlin games and Dolphin games and all that, and reminisce about our past time in Newark, Delaware, which Bodine, I think, played at the stadium there. But we being in business, I just realized that we wanted to have more. We wanted to leverage our alumni relationships and help each other with our businesses. So we kind of set out to develop a platform, a community where people can get together, kind of a LinkedIn meets Facebook, but geared specifically to alumni. And so that's what started Alumni Direct, is just bringing these communities together, an athlete community center, college community centers, could be a fraternity sorority community center, but that idea of you can go to one centralized platform and do a lot of different things.
Well, I have to be transparent. I began my career at Villanova in 1984 when we reinstated the football program. Okay. And by the time I graduated, which was in 1989, during that time, 5 years period, we did not have Delaware on our schedule. They did not, I don't want to say they didn't want to play us, but maybe because we were reinstated the program, they felt like we weren't ready yet to compete against them. But after I graduated, the Villanova joined the Yankee Conference, and we began competing against your Blue Hens. And let me tell you, we've had some battles, right? You can remember some of those older battles as well. So it's all good. My next question is...
Wait, one quick thing on that. So when that time period you talked about, that's about when I was in school. We had Rich Gannon. A lot of people out there know Rich Gannon.
Absolutely.
Had a very successful NFL career. So maybe it was just, they're like, Rich Gannon's the quarterback. We'll just wait until he's out.
Well, listen, I have a quick story. Rich Gannon came up to Villanova during the summer, and he and I played catch together in the old Jake Niven gym. So believe me, I remember those times. I actually was pretty good friends with his brother through a mutual friend. So it's a small world. It's it's just as you're talking about with Alumni Direct. the opportunity to network and meet folks and build common ground and be able to help each other navigate the business world and even in your personal life is what sports is absolutely about. And a lot of people don't know that who did not play it. So, I totally get it. And, you're going to do great with this organization. My next question is, talk about the alumni engagement and why that's important.
Sure. So I think in any type of networking or connecting, there's some type of an affinity relationship. And that affinity, in this case, we're talking about alumni. I think it's so important because people want to help each other out. And it's just that, kind of alluded to when just starting this whole thing is that you have that common ground. You can talk about, regardless of the span of years when you went to school, there's still a lot of things going on campus or, towns, things change and all that. But you have that to work on. And I think I always talk about a good example. This is one of the areas we have on our site is this, a section for jobs. And, we're more of that conduit platform, not getting into the whole recruiting side of things, but more so is that like in an alumni community center. So say, for example, Villanova, it would be Villanova alumni posting jobs for fellow Villanova alumni or even Villanova students. And the idea there is you're narrowing it down. You're not looking at, a Delaware guy, Ohio State guy, Rutgers guy trying to put a job out there. It's a specific alumni, trying to get a fellow alumni. And I always say, if I'm interviewing 5 people, they all have the same credentials. One went to Delaware. I'm probably going to hire the Delaware person because I went there. So it's just something special about, sharing your affinity, your experience of when you were at school, regardless of when you went. And obviously, like some of these bigger programs and the sports programs, come college football, Get Day, homecomings and all that, it brings a lot of different alumni age groups together. But I think the common ground, if you talk to alumni, they want to help each other. They want to pay it forward, and when they get to the older, they want to mentor and help out the current students or the young alumni.
And this is a segue right into the next question, which is of the importance of networking. Alumni Direct is providing an additional opportunity for those who want to reconnect or connect with their fellow alumni. A lot of folks are maybe a little intimidated by the larger alumni organizations, or maybe they feel because they don't live in the area, they don't have access to the alumni associations and those connections. So I think that speak to that, the additional importance of having an additional organization that is doing what most universities or colleges are doing, but maybe they're not having, all the success that they would want to have.
Sure. I think in a lot of, and we talk about this, I think with a lot of schools, they have their platforms for their alumni relations, alumni association. They're great platforms. But I think sometimes the alumni tend to not want to go to the platforms kind of more on the fundraising component. And, don't get me wrong. I mean, schools need to raise funds, but I think sometimes, people want to give when they want to give. And I think so it might be something where they don't go to their own alumni site because it's just going to be them getting money. So we're trying to create more of that neutral platform where it's, it's related to the school. We all want to work together. In an ideal world, we'd be working with the school alumni relations, alumni association, as well as the alumni members who are our target audience. But I think it's important to just to help them to understand with networking, it's always like, even if you have friends, I mean, for me, and, that's how we met, Odin and myself, just networking through different groups is just, you kind of find those common things that make sense where you can work together. And for me with networking, sometimes my family jokes around with me and say that's my superpower, but I try to always look at the big picture. And when I talk to people, I want to see how can I help them. I think it's important when you're networking to take that attitude of like, not necessarily what's in it for me, but how can I help others? And I think if you have that pay it forward mentality, I think it goes a lot further. I mean, I always talk about stories where I'll say, that resonate with, helping people. Somebody could be like super wealthy, let's say, and you'd be like, okay, well, what can I offer to them? How can I help them? Well, maybe you can help one of their children. You never know what you could do to help other people out. So just to have that pay it forward mentality, and I think that goes a long way.
I totally agree. Totally agree. Let's talk about the athletes to entrepreneurs.
Sure. So it's been fun. It's been probably a couple years now that we've been doing the podcast. We've done over 100 episodes now, and I kind of through some of these different sports groups started meeting people, meeting athletes, meeting other people in that space. And just understanding there's such a problem today, a struggle with athletes transitioning out of sports. And I know you've gone through a Bodine, others I've gone through to a certain extent, but there's, whether it's on the financial side, whether it's on the mental health side, the business side, athletes struggle. Not everybody struggles, but they're struggling with that transition, especially when, some of these Division I athletes, that they're so focused on the game and they're practicing, playing all that. And then all of a sudden it's kind of taken away from them, whether it's, they graduate, they don't make it professional, or even professional athletes that play for a short period of time. So I think it's, I see the struggles, and I started listening to a couple other podcasts, and they had some good guests, and just listening to them, I said, this is something that's really interesting to me. How can I make an impact and help out others? So it kind of started the journey. My son, actually, he's done some podcasts and has a very successful podcast on the Mets, New York Mets. And so I saw what he did, and I kind of liked the whole podcasting thing, giving a platform. But the more I started, even from the beginning, interviewing these different athletes, again, like I mentioned earlier, all sports, men, women, Olympians, wrestlers, soccer, football, baseball, whatever it was, every episode, Bodine, is great. I listen to him when I edit him, and the advice that these athletes have is just tremendous. And we really want to get this podcast out, more recognized to people, because I think if it doesn't just have to be athletes, but I think, athletes in specific, they might be hurting. And if they can get one bit of advice, it just kind of turns them around, because it's all about, to us, I always say it's teaching aspiring athletes that there is life after sports. And so it's become such ingrained in me now to continue. I did a podcast earlier today with a former college softball player, and she was great. She, unfortunately, her career got derailed by a head injury her junior year. But to see, and she's just graduated not that long ago, but to see the growth that she's had and the maturity was unbelievable. And I think if that can get to just one person, that'd be great. Hopefully a lot more athletes than that. So I think it's a significant issue, and we really want to make an impact. And I think the podcast is kind of runs parallel to Alumni Direct. Alumni Direct then becomes that conduit platform where we have resource partners there to help.
I don't know if you remember, but when you interviewed me and we were talking, you interviewed me regarding my book, Race Against Race, My Journey of Diversity and Inclusion Through Sports. You might remember the story I talked about getting advice from Mr. Irving. Most people call him Dr. J. And I was lucky enough to have known him and was friends with him and his family for a short period of time, and had the opportunity to, get some great advice my senior year before I graduated. And I'm telling you, it was absolutely the best advice. And, the conversations that you're having, the conversations our group is having when we do our Zoom calls, you're right. There are so many student athletes out there that when their career comes to an end, if they don't have or receive the right information regarding how to move forward with their career, they could be stuck. And so you've heard those stories, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's, and so to give them the guidance and, let them know that there are people out there that care. I think that's the thing too, is that a lot of these athletes, they struggle and they don't know what to do. I mean, I'm Bo Dean, the football player. I'm Rob, the runner, Susie, the swimmer. I always bring up those different things, but they identify themselves as the athlete, and they just need to understand that there are people out there that help. And even back to this podcast today, she talked about her journey and how it was almost like the team around her wasn't supportive, which was sad. I mean, here's a person that had a head injury, and the point is that you don't see that. You're not seeing that head injury. It's one thing if you got a broken arm or you're in a knee brace or whatever, but somebody who's had a head injury, and we know, especially with football being a big area with a lot of head injuries, they're just seeing a person here and like, oh, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you playing? Get out here and play. You don't have, there's nothing wrong with you, but they've got a traumatic, brain injury. And so I think people need to be more giving and forgiveness and all that and help. And I think that's important. That's, we're trying to get out of all this.
Well, you know what? Talk about those diverse, you talked about it earlier a little bit. Talk about the diverse group of people that you're having these conversations with. Again, they come from all different sports, collectively. And so it must be exciting talking to folks from softball to baseball to football to hockey, to basketball. I mean, all of these sports, I'm assuming golf as well. And so you're talking to so many different athletes, but they're a diverse group of athletes, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned like we do a monthly networking event for the podcast guests. And even on that, just to see, I know there's we have one person, she comes on, she was a runner and a cyclist. And she just gets a kick out of hearing all these stories from these football players and the baseball players. And I think it just shows you we're this common platform where we're bringing everybody together. I think that's the key there, is that you're looking at, as you mentioned, like all sports, men, women, it doesn't matter. They all have, to me, it's kind of, they have I always talk about, they have the same DNA skill set, because, whether you're a football player, baseball player, runner, MMA fighter, soccer player, there's a lot of common ground that you share. And I think that's what's really cool about bringing people together, is that sports can do that. I think sports is great to bring people together to, depending on what sport it is. You've got a team sport and you got a diverse group of athletes on this team, but they're all coming together in this community and playing together. And it's great. I mean, there's so many issues today in the world that we hear about, all the, the bad stories, but just when you get on that field and you bring everybody together, and even the fans too that are cheering, everything kind of goes out the window. You've got this group of people, doesn't matter what their backgrounds are, but they're all playing together. They're trying to win. It's just, it's really cool. And I really enjoy, that event. Just the other things, like you said, is just understanding. And it's not the other thing that I've seen too, is that I've had athletes from different countries on as well. So that's kind of cool too, is to have I've had people on from Canada, people on from Switzerland, Sweden, Germany, Romania. And so when you're it's interesting to see their journey through sports in other countries too. And just some of the things that we talk about, like the whole transition out of sports, alumni engagement, all that kind of stuff. Like, how does that parlay into other countries? So it's kind of cool to see that. But it's just, there's a common ground between these people, and they all want to work together and help each other out. And that's what we're trying to foster.
I tell you, there are times when I'm watching sports and, you start reminiscing about participating in that sport, but then you get to the point where you start to remember the off-field things that you miss. Does any of your guests that you interview talk about the things that they miss about sports?
Yeah, I think that one of the biggest thing is the camaraderie.
Yep.
I think it's, here you are playing on a team, whatever the sport is. I mean, I even look back to myself. I was a runner in high school and college, and we had a lot of fun. I mean, I had maybe 10, 12, whatever, many people on a team, cross-country team. And we'd go out, run, do a lot of crazy things. It was a lot of fun. And I think that's what people miss. I think the other thing that comes across a lot too is the structure. Is that when you're an athlete and you're in the game, I mean, just the practice, the preparation, everything that you have to do. And then all of a sudden you've got this free time. And then, you might have a job or whatever you're doing after the sport, but you're not as structured. And I think, some people hurt from that because they really need that. And then another one that comes up a lot too is just from a nutrition standpoint, like when you're on that team, and you're let's say in college or the football team, but whatever the team might be, they're probably making sure that you're eating the right things and you're lifting weights the right way. And then all of a sudden, when you don't have that, and you don't have that coach in your ear, what do you do? And I think those are some of the key components that these athletes do miss when they're not in their sport anymore.
Oh, absolutely. Structure is important. And some of us, and it's a learning process for those young kids, but the longer you're involved in sports and it gets ingrained in you, then when you leave sports, once you find and can put your footing on solid ground, you can always refer back to that structure to help you navigate your way through life. And so that is absolutely important. And one of my guests that I interviewed was specifically talking about the wellness, the health aspect of it, eating right? A lot of these kids are eating the wrong foods, and that's having an adverse effect on their performance because they're getting some of the wrong information. Eating sugar or eating too much sugar or Skittles, and I don't want to paint a bad picture on Skittles, but we know that particular athlete, right, who was a former professional football player who was eating Skittles on the sideline in between plays, right? But the kids don't understand that their growing bodies should not be, stuffing down sugar, before a game and then during the game because they want that increase of energy because they go to a high, but then they're going to crash. Right. So there's just so many things about sports that is helpful. Knowing how to eat, knowing how to conform to the right structure, the right culture, all these things. So all those things all of a sudden come to a halt. And then you expect these athletes to say, okay, the ones who are going to go on to, say, the Olympics, I'm going to be interviewing someone who was a gold medalist in a former Olympics in one of my upcoming shows. But athletes are going on to the Olympics. A small group are going on to professionals. There's a larger number, right? Like 99% that are not becoming professionals. So they have to figure out a way how to navigate their new life situation. And you're providing that opportunity. And that's got to feel good.
It does. Because and that's, wanting to get out in front of more people too, just to know that you can, here's what this is what they did. And I think, you hear these stories about other people and you can relate to that because you were like them. And I think that's very helpful. It's just to see, how they've navigated their nutrition and their health and things like that. And, once you're, when you're in the game and practicing all that too, and you're younger, it's obviously probably easier to keep the weight off and all that too, and be in better shape. And then you realize when you get older, not so much. And that's when you need to start eating, better and all that, which a lot of people don't understand.
Well, listen, you're meeting so many people. I see you meeting people, the Zoom calls and the networking events that you've put together are absolutely a great thing. I think of it as a way to jumpstart the conversation. I've seen people be a part of your networking events and some of them are a little shy to jump right in, right? But some of them have wonderful personalities where they're confident enough to jump out in front and introduce themselves and say what they're up to and where they're from and what school they're from and so forth and so on. And so it's definitely meaningful to a lot of these folks who are former athletes. What's the next step for you?
I think the next step is just trying to, across all the platforms that I'm involved with, is trying to grow them and just impact more people. I mean, with the podcast, like I said, it'd be great to start getting some more eyes and, viewers on it, and just knowing that we are helping people make an impact. So that's something. I have another podcast too called NIL for You, which, all about NIL and education on NIL, which is important because a lot of times people, they're just thinking about the big deals, but there's a lot that can be said for the education. And then Alumni Direct is just, there's a lot of different platforms out there. And I think there's just a lot of people that need help, and we want to make it easy for them. And so, we'd love to see Alumni Direct grow and become just a really great platform for people to utilize. And so that's kind of the next steps for us, is just, how do we grow this and make it special? And, like you said, those interactions that we're creating on these Zoom calls for this smaller group, how do we do that on a larger scale and bring athletes and other college alumni together and just give them a positive experience and really make an impact on their lives?
How can former athletes or anyone who wants to get in touch with Alumni Direct, how can you be reached?
They can go out to alumnidirect.com. You can follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and each week we do we'll do short clips of the podcast that's going on that week. You can find me on LinkedIn, Rob Finkelstein. Look me up there on LinkedIn, and also Facebook. But any way we could impact people, please reach out to us and let us know what we can do to help.
Well, but before we go, share a wonderful, positive story regarding some of your alumni and your classmates and contemporaries back at Delaware that you can remember off the top of your head.
So when I was there, or you mean as an alumni?
As an alumni. I know, didn't you just recently run into or go to New York and meet one of your classmates you were telling me about? Did I get that?
Yeah. So that was more like alumni actually from a high school, guys that I ran cross country and track with. And it was just kind of great to get together with them. I mean, here we were 40 years later, and just, out to dinner, having great conversations, doing a tour of the town that I grew up in. It was really cool. Actually went to a pizza place with my best friend who I was staying with. And, we ran cross country track together in high school and a little bit in college. And so we go to this pizza place, and I get this big slice of pizza, and I walk up to the owner of the place. I was like, dude, man, it's been 40 years since I've been here. And he goes, well, thank you. He goes, you know what? He goes, me and my brother have owned this for 45 years. So I was like, But yeah, it's just fun going back. I mean, even going back to Delaware, went back a couple of times on homecoming as we were trying to build Alumni Direct. We had some meetings with the president of the University of Delaware and stuff. And it was just cool getting back on campus and just seeing seeing the things that have changed. I mean, that's what I encourage for everybody is like, go back to your campuses, especially if you haven't been there a while. You see a lot of changes going on now. A lot of changes on our main street in University of Delaware, where just new restaurants and stores and condos going up. But I guess those were the kind of the fun high school alumni story there, and just the college going back for homecomings. And the biggest part, I always got to say this, I preface this, that I met my wife senior year. I don't know if you ever went to Delaware at the time, but this place called the Stone Balloon. And so the Stone Balloon, it was senior night, and I met my wife there, and we've been together now for 37 years after we met in that September night at the Stone Balloon. So that was one of my biggest takeaways from my college days, is my wife is a fellow alumni with me.
Well, congratulations. Say hello to the wife for me. We're coming at the end of the program. And Rob, thank you. Rob Finkelstein, thank you very much for being a guest on the show. I appreciate it. We've come to the end of the program, so thank the audience. Thank you very much for your time. Stay tuned. There's more to come. Take care.